Hey guys, and welcome to the Tech Enthusiast channel. My name is Sanugar, and today we'll be talking about VBA, or what is also known as Visual Basic Access. So, what is Visual Basic Access? Well, essentially, VBA is the underlying code that the Microsoft Office application suite uses in order to enable their functionalities, and we can also use this VBA code to automate or create custom functions, manipulate data, create user interfaces, and so much more. The essential possibilities are endless. So today we'll be focusing on the basics or the intro to VBA coding, and we'll be using Excel as the platform uh, of our choice. So today I will be going through a small VBA project, essentially an example, so that beginners could tag along and work your way upwards from there. So let's get into it. So when we talk about VBA projects that we can do on Excel, there are many examples that come to mind. Day-to-day tasks that would be made so much easier, so much more easier if you were to just introduce even a little bit of automation into it. If these tasks would become so much more easier all of a sudden. So in this example for today's tutorial, we talk about a gradebook analyzer. Now I have an Excel sheet open here with the completed project to give you an idea of what kind of functionality we will be talking about in today's tutorial using VBA. So assume that you are a lecturer or a teacher or even a student, someone who has to deal with large data sets, who has to observe, analyze data sets that include grades. And there comes a point where you need to gather certain statistics from these large data sets. So in this case, assume you needed to get the average, the overall average marks that the students have achieved in for assignment 1 and assignment 2. Also, there are so many instances where you would require to know who the top performer is and what this top performer's scoring is. So details like this, if you were to do it in an ideal manner on Excel, you would have to pick a cell where you would want those values to be shown, and then you would have to type out a formula and then select the range of cells that you want to essentially Excel to see, look into to get these results. And it's somewhat of a very tedious task, and you essentially would have to do this over and over again as the data table increases and as it gets more and more complicated. So what if we were to introduce a method where these functionalities can be achieved with the simple click of a button? That's exactly what we have done here today. So let me just show you what has happened here. As soon as I click on clear details, you will see this area would have clear all the details. And if I click on analyze gradebook, you will see it returned me some values. So essentially it's showing me the averages for assignment 1, assignment 2. It's also showing me the top student, his name, and the top score. They have calculated that for me as well with a simple click of a button. And ladies and gentlemen, all we have to do is keep adding to this data set, and that's all we have to do. And click on analyze gradebook again if there are new data values entered, and it will do all that work for us automatically. So that is the brilliance of using VBA to automate these certain tasks. So in the next bit of this video, we will be talking about how we manage to do this simple task. So let's move on. So after you're done with that, opening up a blank Excel sheet, what you need to do is enable macros for this Excel sheet. So what do I mean by that? Enabling macros essentially means that you are enabling the functionality that VBA code will allow you to conduct on this Excel sheet. So let me show you how you do that. Click on File and Save As, and then you will see, click on this expansion dialog box, and you will see a number of extensions that you can possibly formats that you can save this Excel sheet in. So make sure that you click on Excel macro enabled workbook or for short .xlsm. Click on that and click on save. After you've done that, you're pretty much ready to code in VBA. Now for us to code in VBA, we first need a data set that we need to analyze, or for the gradebook analyzer. So let me real quickly just paste in a data set that I have in my. Once you've pasted the data set, On a separate note, let me show you something that you can do to make your life much easier. Is you select this data range that includes all the data that you want in the table, go to insert and create a table. So since I have the data range already highlighted, it will mention it all here. Yes, my table does have headers, student names, assignment 1 marks, assignment 2 marks, and just click on OK. Now what you've essentially done is make your life so much easier, where you can, even without employing any VBA coding or macros, you can simply do quick filtrations of your data with respect to each column, and that makes your life so much easier, as it recognizes all this data that you have included in this worksheet under one table. Now let's move on to the VBA coding. So before you start any VBA coding, you first need to check if your developer tab is activated. So this is the developer tab in an Excel sheet, and if you do not see it on your Excel sheet, what you need to do is click on File, Options, and under Options you can see the Customize Ribbon button. Click on that, and under Main tabs you will see all the main tabs that you have selected to appear on your Excel sheet. So here you can see the developer tab, and if the developer tab is not selected, click on that checkbox and click OK. Now if you didn't have it previously, you will now see the developer tab. So under the developer tab there are many interesting options and buttons that you can click and that have various functionalities, but for the sake of today's tutorial, we will be focusing on the VBA coding section only. And in order to do that, we need a coding environment. So to do that, click on View Code, which will take you to a whole new window. So this window might seem a bit daunting at first because it has many options and it's somewhat of an unfamiliar environment to a beginner. So here on the top left hand side, you will see essentially the file hierarchy for your VBA project. So in this case, this highlighted VBA project shows the gradebook analyzer project in its whole. Under that, when you expand it, it will show your sheet or the worksheet. Essentially, that what that shows is all the data that you have included in this worksheet named gradebook. And right below that is this workbook. This workbook refers to the entire Excel file. So whatever worksheets you open under this Excel file will be included under this workbook. Now we come to an interesting section known as modules. So what are modules? So in Excel VBA coding, we need to assume that you are in charge of a much larger project where you're creating, let's say, a dashboard for a production or manufacturing company where they need live statistical views of certain data sets or their values at the click of a button, and this essentially would involve many custom functionalities that you created using VBA. And let's say you wanted to tinker with a certain function or a group of functions. This would involve handling trying to search for certain specific lines of code or certain snippets or blocks of code. So in order for the ease of finding these snippets or blocks of code, you organize them into modules where the functionalities or whatever hierarchy you want to establish for the separate blocks of code and functionality that you have created will come under separate modules that will suit your needs. So for this case, in this project, because it is somewhat of a very simple project, we will be using one module where all our code will be going in this module. So when it comes to the VBA code or enabling the functionality, we essentially in this project need to create a function where we average out the assignment marks for assignment 1 and assignment 2 separately. Then we need to find out who the top performer is, his or her name, and their top score or the score that allowed them to become the top performer. So to do this, what we first need to do is type out the VBA code. So let me just fast forward and show you the entire block of code that is required to enable the functionalities I described. So before anything, you first need to start off a subroutine. So what is a subroutine? Subroutines are essentially blocks of code that under which you will organize. It's another somewhat of an organization level, but it is code or syntax that we use to declare a block of code, a start and the end of a block of code. So under the first subroutine, I will be essentially coding all the functionalities that I described before, the averaging and then the finding the top performer. So first things first, you might see these little green texts that appear throughout that seem to be explaining what the certain levels of code, certain sets of code do. Now you would think, why does these text, these written form of text, not affect the functioning of the code? That is a very handy feature called commenting, where if in front of any text I include a colon or a comma, it will comment it and thus will not be included when the compiler is running the code. So essentially it helps programmer essentially keep track of what he's doing. So in this case I will be using the comments feature in order to explain the different functionalities of the different snippets of code that we've typed here. So now that we are back on the Excel sheet, let me show you how you can connect those macros that we created or the functions that we coded into the separate subroutines to buttons. So under the developer tab, we have the insert button here. Click on insert and select the form control option, and essentially you can drag and create a button to the size of your liking. And here you will see all the separate macros that you created. So see, as we have named under the named the different subroutines with the functionality that we included in those separate subroutines, you will essentially be able to realize which macros do what. So for the first button, I want to essentially display all the values that we talked about before, about the averages of the assignment 1 and 2, and I want to also see the top scorer and his or her marks. So I would essentially select this particular macro and click on OK, and it will create the button. Let us quickly rename the button by right clicking and then click on edit text, and let's say analyze gradebook. Right, now for the moment of truth, let us see if it works. So let's say I in the subroutine that we wrote, I essentially coded it in such a way where I want those details or the functionality we talked about to appear in this particular area. So fingers crossed, let us click analyze gradebook and see what happens. Voila, we have what we wanted. So essentially, like we talked about at the very beginning of the video, it has given me the averages for assignment 1, averages for assignment 2, the top student. It has realized who the top student is, that is Anushka Silva, and then they've added the 2 assignment marks and given me his top score. So what is great about this is, let's say to test it, if you wanted to scale this as a Excel sheet up, let's say it included the records of 5,000 students, for example, and you included those 5,000 students after you finished coding all this, and let's say I put an example and type in my name in a narcissistic manner. I want to be the top scorers all of a sudden, and I write 100 for both assignments. Quite a improbable future, but we'll see. So now ideally, the functionality that we've given should allow the Excel sheet to realize that now the top scorer or the top performer is not Anushka Silva anymore. And as soon as I click on this analyze gradebook button, the results should show so as well. Voila, it has given me the new top performer. And now with the top score of 200. Quite improbable, but in this hypothetical universe, I'm in control. So who's to say what? So essentially, the main brunt of the matter has been completed. Now, remember that small snippet of code that I included at the very end, the separate subroutine that was meant to clear this assignment. Now, let's say I want to show this functionality to someone and I want to clear this area. of all the results that it's given for maybe a more dramatic effect. So let's just insert another button. Let's say right around here for the sake of neatness. And like before, I name that subroutine clear, average, and top. That means essentially clear the results, or delete all the values in those cells. Click on it, click on OK. Let's rename that. Let's type in clear data, and moment of truth, let's see what it does. Click on clear data, and it essentially took away everything. So ladies and gentlemen, we just created or automated an entire process within a span of 10 minutes. That is how easy it is to automate somewhat of a very tedious task on Excel with a few lines of code. Now, like I said before, this might all those coding that we did might seem a bit intimidating, but with the help of new tools like ChatGPT or Bard, such things will be a matter of the past, where you essentially, as you run into problems, you can realize it at that point on. And even without the help of using ChatGPT or Bard, Excel VBA itself has a very feature rich debug features, where essentially if it realizes that something is wrong with the code, it will give us an error code, and it will also pinpoint in the particular lines of code where Excel thinks the problem is, and this makes realizing what the problems are extremely easy. So this, ladies and gentlemen, was a demonstration of a very simple operation. Just imagine the possibilities that can be achieved if we were to employ VBA in a more grandiose manner. The possibilities are endless, as we started off in this video. So thank you for watching today's tutorial. Hope you subscribe to the Tech Enthusiast channel. Thank you and have a nice day, guys.